Hey everyone, I hope everything is going okay. I wanted to schedule this live session because I got a couple of comments from people asking me how you figure out what the right balance is between spending your Bitcoin, spending your income, and enjoying your life. You have to understand that it does take a little bit of sacrifice to buy Bitcoin. And I'm sure you know this if you own Bitcoin. I'm sure you know this. You have to decrease your expenses, you have to increase your income, you have to find ways to make it so that the difference between what you consume and what you save is positive, right? So you have to spend more than you earn, then you have to buy Bitcoin with the difference. You have to forego certain things that you may want to do today. I think that's probably the hardest part of personal finance in general, just finding a balance, because finding a balance is hard. It's just difficult to not spend your money today if you have it available, right? Why would you want to save for the future when you don't even know if the future is going to happen? So I have a few. I have a spreadsheet here where I just talk more about the how you increase your income, decrease your expenses, different types of budgets. I think that a lot of Bitcoiners are on what I call the extreme budget. Let me zoom in here. They're on the extreme budget. And what that means is, by the way, the spreadsheet is available in the description below if you want to download it and you want to play around with it, do whatever you want with it. I'll actually send you a link as well in the chat. Let me just send it here. So that's the spreadsheet. You can check out the link in the chat. If you want to change it in any way, what you have to do is, you can see my screen, just go to File. There's an arrow at the top here that shows you the menus. So open the menu, go to File, and then you can download it to your computer using Microsoft Excel. So hit Microsoft Excel, you can download it, and then if you go on Google Drive, you'll be able to play around with the spreadsheet. Just do that on your own. Don't request to edit it, because I'm not going to give you access. Okay, so back to the budget here. I think that a lot of people are on the extreme budget, a lot of Bitcoiners at least, because they are spending on their needs and they're cutting out their needs as ruthlessly as possible. So let's say, for example, you have a $10,000 income, you're paying 30% in taxes. After tax, you're paying 7,000, or you're getting paid $7,000. So what the Bitcoiner would do is they would spend, let's say, $5,000 on car, food, rent, whatever they have to pay for, $5,000. That's 70%, 71% of their income. And then they say, I'm not going to spend anything on my wants. I'm going to delay gratification. I'm going to keep delaying gratification for as long as possible. And there's nothing wrong with this. I actually like this idea, because I was doing this for a while as well. I was doing this for the first few years of my stacking journey. The first, not even a few years. It's only been a few years since I've been in Bitcoin. But in 2022 to 2023, I was doing Uber Eats for 2 years to earn more money so that I could buy more Bitcoin. And at points, I was doing extra orders to make an extra $10 so I could buy a few extra Satoshis, because Bitcoin was on sale at that time, right? So at that time, when I was doing Uber, you could buy, so one order would be, let's say an order was $10, you get paid $10. That $10 would buy you something like 35,000 Satoshis. That's Canadian dollars, 10 Canadian dollars. Today, $10 will buy you, in Canadian dollars, it'll buy you like 7,000. So 35,000 versus 10,000. You can see the value of not delaying gratification you can see the value of delaying gratification, of not getting instant gratification. You buy the Bitcoin, so I could have easily went out and gotten a nicer meal. I could have bought some kind of food with that $10. I could have bought a video game by having multiple orders, but instead what I did was I chose to buy Bitcoin, and that delayed gratification really helped. Like I said, a $10 order bought me 35,000 Satoshis. Today, that 35,000 Satoshis is worth, let me see here. We'll go Bitcoin to CAD. Today, that 35,000 Satoshis, so it's 0.00035 Bitcoin. Oh, yeah, there you go. So it went from $10 all the way to $53.27. So that's what Bitcoin gives you, that delayed gratification. But you have to find a balance. Every dollar that you put into Bitcoin will, of course, be valuable, but how many dollars can you put into Bitcoin? Can you cut out all of your expenses to buy Bitcoin? Can you cut out your shelter needs to buy Bitcoin? Is that what you plan to do? I personally wouldn't do that, and I don't think that's worth it. I think having a having a decent life is very important. Having a life that you actually enjoy is very important. I find value in that. So I made this post on X. If you haven't died from starvation yet, you are short Bitcoin. This is the kind of way that some people actually think. They think that if you spend anything on enjoying your life, if you spend anything on just having a good life, you're wasting money. Right. And what I meant by this is, of course, this is a little bit of an exaggeration. If you haven't died from starvation yet, you are short Bitcoin. It just means that if you're putting anything towards even your needs, then you are short Bitcoin. You're not taking advantage of that potential future delayed gratification where you could have a 5x, 10x, 100x. Eventually, Bitcoin is going to millions of dollars. So you could, instead of getting the steak, you should be getting the ramen. That's not the way that I want to live my life. The way that I want to live my life is increase my income so that instead of having to struggle and go with the extreme budget and think about every single expense that I have, I would personally rather increase my income and then put more money into Bitcoin whenever I can. I think that's worth it. I think that is so worth it because instead of living the extreme life, the extreme budget, where you only spend money on your needs, you don't spend money on anything that you enjoy. You don't spend money on anything that you actually like doing. I would personally rather increase my income. So let's say, for example, instead of $10,000, let's say you bump your income up to $12,000. You bump your income up by 20%. Keep in mind that this works for anybody. This isn't just work for me. It works for anybody. What I would do is increase my income, decrease my expenses, my expenses for needs, pay for some of the things that I want, and then at the same time invest more than the people on the extreme budget. So there are people out there who will do whatever they can to save a couple of pennies, but they won't work harder. They won't try to sell a product. They won't try to sell something that can give them a higher income, an increase in income. They won't do that because they're worried about getting judged. They're worried about people thinking that they don't know what they're doing. They're worried about failure. I've failed, right? And that's the only reason why I was able to increase my income from whatever I was making when I was doing Uber till now. Today, I try not to focus on the pennies. Like, let's say, for example, there's something that I want to buy. If it's a little bit more expensive, then I'll get it. Before, what I would do is I would save 50 cents to get the thing that's cheaper so that I can save 50 cents and I can feel better about myself. Today, I'm focusing on doing whatever I can. You might have noticed that I'm posting more content on YouTube. I'm trying to help more people. I'm trying to get more one-on-one meetings. By the way, if you do want to book a one-on-one meeting with me, there's a link in the description below. But my goal is to just keep increasing my income so that I can put more of that money that I earn into Bitcoin rather than having to cut my expenses, rather than having to do things that I don't feel like doing. I would rather increase my income. I would rather make it easier for myself to earn more money. So I'm just going to go through the comments here. I think there's a couple of great comments here. Peace, Carlton. Good to see you here, man. The Bitcoin nurse. Good to see you. Miguel. Hello, Rajat. Thanks for all the info every day. It's making a big difference for the future. Of course, I keep doing it. I want to keep doing it. And this is a great comment from MHMA. Do both. Yes, absolutely. Find the balance. Increase your income, decrease your expenses, and put money into Bitcoin. Keep doing that. Keep doing that. When you get to a certain level, increase it more. Then when you get to a certain level, increase it even more. Okay, next one. Maximum 40 to 50%. Organism, can you elaborate on this? I don't know what you mean by this. Maximum 40 to 50%. I think what you mean here is 40 to 50% on your needs, but just elaborate on that. Give me some more details. As we're entering the holiday season, companies will be hiring temporary. Yes. Take the extra money and buy Bitcoin. Agreed. Completely agreed. If you can make an extra $10 an hour, do maybe one or two shifts a week, that's an extra $50 to $100 that you can make that you can put into Bitcoin. And that may not seem like a lot today, just like that $10 purchase that I had in 2022 didn't seem like a lot. So at the bottom in 2022, I was buying as much as I could. It was around here. around these periods here, I was buying as much as I could. I was doing as much Uber as I could to buy as much Bitcoin as I could. There was a lot of time where Bitcoin's price was so low that it felt like I was that I shouldn't buy anymore. That's how low the price was at that time. Bitcoin's price went all the way down to $22,000, all the way from 80,000 to 22,000. And I I didn't I didn't fully understand Bitcoin at that point. I wasn't fully orange pilled. So I found the balance. I found a way to delay gratification at that time, and now I'm happier. Now I feel like my stack can actually do something for me in the next 10, 15 years. I'm not going to say how much I have. Of course, I don't think anybody should reveal how much Bitcoin they have, but I think in the next 10 years, we should be okay. We should be fine. 10, 15 years, we should be okay. We shouldn't have any problems with our finances. And again, that's because we delayed gratification. So how do you find that balance? I think the right way to find the balance between like let's see here. Between like Carlton's way said here, as we're entering the holiday season, companies will be hiring temporary, take the extra money and buy Bitcoin. What I would say is it could be very smart to try to start something that will provide you with income forever. So, for example, all of you guys here, everybody who's watching this video, I highly recommend that you try to start a YouTube channel. You don't know if it could do well, you have no idea. Don't just assume that the Bitcoin, YouTube money scene is oversaturated. Don't assume that. Try. Try making videos. Go on YouTube, search how to make good YouTube videos. The good thing about YouTube is that, okay, so in this example, as we're entering the holiday season, you give an hour of work and you get paid for an hour. You don't get paid again. On the other hand, with the YouTube videos that I'm making, there are videos that I made over a year ago and they're still paying me. They're still making money to this day. To this day, they're making micro pennies every single day, a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies, and it all adds up. So I highly recommend do something. You don't have to do YouTube. You don't have to do that, of course. Do something that can pay you forever. And then that way you can keep funneling money into Bitcoin. You can create your own dividends essentially. If you can create your own dividends and you keep putting more and more money into Bitcoin, at some point you're going to have enough Bitcoin. You're going to be able to accelerate your purchases over time, I would say, because you're going to understand Bitcoin deeper. Your income is going to increase. So do something that pays you today and pays you in the future. So you have to have a job, of course, and then create something on top of that, like a business that can pay you in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. Carlin, thank you so much for the super sticker. Really appreciate that. $1.99. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, and let's keep going here with the comments. I'm doing it in a different way. I use since years the same trade capital of 30K for only swing and spot trading. We need 50% permanent into Bitcoin and 50% for cash spending and leftover respend. Yeah, that's great. If you can keep doing that consistently, that's awesome. Just keep doing it. I think that could be really lucrative, right? There are some people who are really great with swing trading. I'm not that kind of person. I don't like focusing on the markets like that. But if you can do this, then of course, I think you have to with swing trading, you're trying to find stocks that are going to go up and then come down. So for example, what you might do here is you're trying to find the bottom and then you sell the top. So you buy the bottom, you sell the top. You try to find that bottom. You try to find a way for the where the market is going to swing from a low to a high. So in this case, what would have happened is they would have bought here, they would have sold here, they would have tried to buy here, then they would have tried to sell at the next top. The problem is that you don't know where the next top is. Most people were saying that Bitcoin is going to 200K, 300K, $1 million when Bitcoin was at 80,000 in the last cycle. So this is very difficult. It takes a lot of practice. If you can do it, then do it. I think that's fine. Make money however you can. As long as it's legal, as long as you're not hurting anybody, make money however you can. But then try to convert that money into Bitcoin. Try to increase your income, even though you're paying more in taxes. That's perfectly fine. Increase your income so you can spend money on your needs. You don't have to focus too much. You don't have to stress out too much about when your next meal is going to come in. You don't have to focus too much on, oh, will I be able to pay my next rent payment? Will I be able to make my next energy or electricity payment? Will I be able to make my next payment? You don't have to worry about that. That's the goal here. The goal is to have less stress in the present pay for your needs, pay for the things that you want, and still have money to put into your savings, still have money to put into your investments. So do whatever you can, like this person said, swing trading. This person above said, work an extra job, and I completely agree with that. I can't find that comment there. Um, oh, there's more comments here. Let's see. What do you think about hitting debt hard for a while to decrease expenses instead of buying as much Bitcoin? So it really depends on the interest rate of the debt, right? So if your debt is being charged, like your interest rate is 20%, then it may not be worth it to buy Bitcoin because the hurdle rate is so much higher. In theory, it would make sense, but I feel like it'd be very stressful because if Bitcoin doesn't give you a 20% return 1 year, you're just going to feel stupid, right? You just pay 20% interest for nothing. In this case, depends on how much the interest is. So, for example, there's probably a gray line in there somewhere, but I would say 12% and below is fine. 15% and above is a little high. That's what I would say. 15% and above is a little, but you have to make that decision for yourself, right? I would say that paying off debt could be worth it. It'll reduce your stress. It'll make you more worry free, and you can think of better ideas. You can do better things with your time. You can improve the solutions that you're trying to offer. Let's say, for example, you're trying to create a product. If you're less stressful, or if you're less stressed out and you pay off your debt, maybe you have more freedom to do the things that you want to. You're not forced to go to a job that you don't like. So really great insight there, Gronky Tonk man. I agree with you. I think that if you have high interest debt, it would be worth it to hit that debt hard. But if you have low interest debt, try to put as much of it into Bitcoin as you can, because that money that you're getting, it's tax free. Or sorry, it's low interest, it's almost free, right? If it's low interest compared to Bitcoin, you're getting a massive discount on whatever the interest rate is, because the interest rates today aren't real. I also think that Bitcoin's returns are going to accelerate over time. I don't think Bitcoin's going to have diminishing returns. So even 20% may seem low to some people, but it's more about peace of mind in this case. I think that it's because I think that it's about not having to think about the debt all the time. That's what I would personally want. Up to you how you think of it, but I would say yes, paying off your debt would be very smart, depending on what kind of debt it is. Okay, so here I want to see how much it costs to sustain a miner per coin right now. There are different. So it depends on how much your energy costs in different areas of the world. It would be different. So let's say, for example, if you were in a highly populated area, you'd probably pay a lot more to mine Bitcoin. But if you're in a area that has very cheap energy, then you would pay a lot less. And that's one of the things that a lot of miners are actually taking advantage of. So what miners are doing is they're building infrastructure and facilities in countries in Africa where energy is cheap. So they're creating a power grid so that they can access Bitcoin, but then at the same time, they're creating a power grid for that city or that country in which they want to operate. So they're winning, and Bitcoin is giving a reason it's giving entrepreneurs a reason to create more infrastructure, to create more value in the cities that they're in. I don't know the exact details on this, but try to look into it. I think there's Bitcoin mining infrastructure uh in in Nairobi. Let me just Google it quickly. Give me a second here. Infrastructure in Africa. Oh, here you go. So we can see here the crypto mines bringing light to rural Zambia. So in certain areas, it's a bad thing because it's too noisy. There's a lot of people there. They don't want to. They don't want to deal with the noise. But then, what this is going to do is it's going to incentivize people to take mines into areas in Africa, rural areas where they don't have energy. Create energy. It attracts Bitcoin miners, but critics argue the government should prioritize expanding power access to its people. So what people are, so this is basically like an argument between socialists and capitalists. So socialists want their government to pay for things and create infrastructure, but capitalists are willing to create more value. And that's exactly what Bitcoin miners are doing. Bitcoin miners are creating value because they get an
In a world
to create value. So they have an incentive to go to
In a world
clicking. They have an incentive to go to Ethiopia and build a power grid because it's profitable for them. That's the difference. So socialists or the people who want to rely on their government, they want their government to do everything, while while capitalists find solutions in the system that'll allow them to create things. So in this case, there's a profit incentive for the Bitcoin miners to create power grids in those areas. On the other hand, with government spending, there is no incentive. Governments would rather spend that money enriching themselves. Why would they want to help people in Ethiopia? They'd rather give their friends and family money, because why not? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, I just realized that. Oh, yeah. Okay, so you can see it. Okay, so back to this comment here. I want to see how much it costs. It really depends on where you are. If the energy use is lower, that if the energy price is lower, then it would be cheaper. If the energy price is higher, then it would be more expensive. So I think in certain areas you can probably mine for like 40, $50,000, but getting there is very hard. So there's a upfront cost to actually getting there to mine. Okay, next comment here. I want to see how much it costs miners to run per coin mined now and then after. I guess so what will happen is essentially it'll double. The cost will double because half of the amount of Bitcoin is being produced. But then you have to remember that a lot of Bitcoin miners will drop off the network. We're going to have a difficulty adjustment down, and it'll become easier for Bitcoin miners, and it'll get cheaper. Okay, let's take a look at another comment here. I'm doing it in a different way. I use since years the same. Oh yeah, that I saw this comment before. Okay. Wow. Okay. I made $40 this week posting content on X to buy more sats. There you go. That's exactly what we want. We want to be able to create value where it's very cheap for us to create that value. For example, the Bitcoin nurse created this value out of thin air. They essentially used whatever's in their brain to create value and to add it to X. And then when they added it to X, people looked at it, they engaged with it, they found value in it, and now Bitcoiners can go and get Bitcoin. That's the best thing that you can do here. Create some value and go buy Bitcoin with it. Okay. This gets hard to balance when married with kids. Of course, I completely agree. My time with them is so scarce, and I care more about them about that than BTC. So I have to stack less to afford time with the family as I still can. This is a perfect content. Really, thank you so much for posting this, Sam. Because I received a comment on one of my on one of my posts where I mentioned that that I want to talk about finding the balance. And on the post, let me just pull up the post. On the post, the person said that you're going to regret it in the future. And I agree with that. You probably will regret it in the future, but you've built memories with your family that no amount of Bitcoin will ever replace. So we can see it. This is the comment. Let me share my screen. This is the comment here. So you see here, this person said, "How will you live with the regret of knowing that you missed the opportunity of a lifetime because you didn't go as hard as you could because you wanted to balance stacking with living your life?" So in this case, with Sam, it's worth it. Who cares? The future doesn't matter as much as the present because his kids have a temporary amount of time where they're at this age. He has a temporary amount of time with his wife, with his family. He doesn't know when they're going to pass away. Who Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea when their family and friends are going to be gone. So this is why you need to find the balance. Let's keep going with that comment. There will be some time for BS later, but I for one am going as hard as I can before the rocket takes off. I do not want to look back and regret that I had the ability. And I agree with you. Agree with you. But you have to find the balance. Nothing is black and white. Nothing works this way. The reason nothing works this way is because nothing is as plain as not having to think about the opportunity cost. There's nothing in the world that operates that way. Everything has trade-offs. There's always going to be trade-offs. And what I mean by that is if you do this, let's say you have a family, let's say you're in Sam's position. You could put all your money into Bitcoin, but what are you giving up? You're giving up a vacation? Are you giving up valuable time for your kids? Are you giving up your kids' extracurricular activities? What else are you giving up? Your kids are the only people who are going to remember. Your family is the only people who are going to remember how much you worked when you should have been spending time with them. You can keep trying to earn more money and you can keep trying to earn more money, and you can keep increasing your expenses if you want to, and you can keep buying more Bitcoin if you want to. Either way, if however you do it, I think the best thing you can do is find the right balance for you. For each person, it's completely different. The married with kid person is going to have a completely different opinion on this than the person who maybe has a single, maybe they're single, maybe they don't have a wife, kids, maybe they don't have a family of their own, and they're just trying to do whatever they can to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. So really great comment and really relevant to this discussion, because finding that balance is so important. I think that you only have a limited amount of time to really build memories, right? The memories that you build are just going to get better over time, while your Bitcoin is going to get better, but after a certain point, the Bitcoin really doesn't make a difference anymore. Because I mean, like I said, I've said this before. Bitcoin's price is going to go up forever. It's going to go to the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. And the reason for that is that there's a finite supply of it, and there's no limit to how many dollars can exist. So what you have to think about here is, let's say you have one Bitcoin today, or you have half a Bitcoin today. How much more value is zero point zero 0.01 Bitcoin going to create? What's the trade-off of getting zero point zero 0.01 Bitcoin? Let's take a look at the compound interest calculator, actually. Maybe this would be a great example for us to look at the compound interest calculator. So let me just switch over to the compound interest calculator. Let's say, for example, you have 0.5 Bitcoin. One Bitcoin is now worth 300K, $300,000. Just for example, let's say, for example, if you could buy an extra 0.01 Bitcoin, what is the value there? So if you're putting $200 per month into Bitcoin, if that's what you can afford, you bought 0.5 Bitcoin, you could put $200 per month into Bitcoin, you're going to be buying 800,000 Satoshis. Is 800,000 Satoshis more worth it to you if you already have half a Bitcoin? Or is it better for you to spend time with your family? What if that $200 per month is the difference between you buying something that improves your family's life, you buying something that actually gives you more enjoyment? What if that 800,000 Satoshis is the difference? So what's your trade-off there? Do you want 800,000 Satoshis, or do you want to enjoy time with, potentially finite time with, your family and friends? Do you want to work an extra few hours a week to earn that extra $200? Or do you want to spend that time with your family and friends? In a few years, in the next few years, I think you're going to value the time with your family a lot more. And I think that Sam's comment there is perfect. I think in the next 30 years, he's not going to care about another 800,000 Satoshis. He's going to care more about having kids who actually like him, right? If you neglect your kids, they're not going to like you in 10 years. They're not going to like you in 20 years. Your kids don't understand that Bitcoin is the best asset in the world. Your kids don't understand that you never sell your Bitcoin. If they're young enough, they're not going to know that. What they are going to remember, though, is whether you spent time with them, whether you left them to do their own thing, or you focused on their life and you asked them questions about them, and you tried to figure out who they are. That's what your kids are going to remember. So again, trying to find that balance is very important, right? It's very difficult to find the balance because there's no clear cut answer. There's no clear cut answer. What if, for example, you're going as hard as you could and you're buying $200 worth of Bitcoin? What if you were to cut that down from $200 to $150? And now you can spend a little bit more money on your kids, your family. You're getting a little bit less in Satoshis, but over the long term, if you already have half a Bitcoin, it doesn't really make a difference. Your stack isn't really increasing that much. In the next, let's say, 15 years, if you already have half a Bitcoin, Bitcoin's price is at 300K. Let's say in the next few years, Bitcoin's price goes to 300K. In the next few years, we'll make this 2030. So in this case, by 2045, you would have only accumulated another 2.8 million Satoshis. You would have increased the amount of Bitcoin in your stack by about 5%, but you would have given up $200 per month, $150 per month. Is that worth it to you? The way that I see it, don't think about it the way that this comment is saying it. I don't like thinking of it this way. The way that I like thinking of it is, buy the things that make your life better, but also work as hard as you can to earn more money so you don't have to sacrifice things. So you don't have to buy the shitty off-brand product, which is going to break a lot quicker because you're saving an extra $2. And instead, you could just buy the higher quality product that gives you a few more years. It gives you more enjoyment. It doesn't make you feel like you're cheap. I don't know. That's the way that I've been seeing the world these days. I think that's what Bitcoin gets you to think of as well. Bitcoin gets you to think that you want more quality over saving money. I think that's the important thing about Bitcoin. Finding that balance is so key. Finding that balance in every situation is so key because you don't want to be stuck making a decision that you regret in the future. So again, this comment here from Sam, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. It's much harder with family. If you're single, you have a lot less trade-offs. There are a lot less trade-offs when you're single. When you're single, you'd probably be better off buying the Bitcoin rather than enjoying your life. Because if you buy the Bitcoin, I would say that you have something to look forward to in the future. Okay, so let's go into the next comment here. How do you feel about ETFs? I hold it in various places, but my retirement hold it in IBIT. So what I would say is instead of just holding the ETFs, I would say you should buy you should buy Bitcoin and cold storage. Again, this is another situation where you want the right balance. You want the right balance between being able to have access to your Bitcoin, but also, let's say, for example, if somebody walks into your house and they take your private keys, you still want to have some wealth stored somewhere, right? You could have a multi-sig setup, however you do it. There's more and more ways that you can do it that I would say would be better than ETFs. But in certain situations, you're forced to buy the ETFs because you can't really do anything else. Add, you can't add self custody Bitcoin to your wallet if you have, let's say, a 401k. Oh, I got a couple of super chats here. So if you want the questions answered right away, just send a super chat and I can see them in my starred chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to be scrolling through my comments and I'm going to be answering all the questions as I get to them. Okay. So this question is, what if you've accumulated enough BTC that you could live off 4% of your stack for the rest of your life? Income products for consistent cash flow. What I would say is just sell some of your Bitcoin. Just give some of your Bitcoin away. Income is the way that I see it. Income. Let's say, for example, if you were to buy a real estate product or a real estate property or something like MSTY, you have to put money up front into those products. And the reason why it's so, the reason why those products, I don't like those products as much is because you require that upfront cost. So what could you do with that upfront cost instead? Let's say, for example, instead of buying a rental property, instead of putting $100,000 into a rental property and then living off the cash flow, you could just own $100,000 worth of Bitcoin and you can sell little bits of it over time. I think that the $100,000 of Bitcoin will probably appreciate much faster than that rental property because you need multiple rental properties to pay for your expenses, right? You need to pay for the mortgage, you need to pay for property taxes. The rental property gives you more headaches. The MSTY, MSTE, I think those could work because the dividend is high enough, but who knows what happens during a bear market? What if they fail? I think you'd be better off just holding Bitcoin, build a business that gives you something that gives you some kind of cash flow over the long term. And then if you have to, you don't have to live off 4% of your stack. You could even get loans against your Bitcoin at some point. Let's say, for example, we'll go to the spreadsheet here. Let's say Bitcoin's price goes to, we'll go with $2 million. Actually, let me just make this so that it's back to the current price. Let's say whenever Bitcoin goes to $2 million, 2038, most people aren't going to retire in like 2030 because I don't know if Bitcoin's price is going to be high enough at that point. There's a certain point where you can retire with your Bitcoin stack, and the way that I see it, this is the way that I calculate it. So if you go to the spreadsheet, what you can do is you can actually increase your monthly expenses and you can add an inflation rate on there. So if you take a look at your monthly expenses, your fiat monthly expenses, over time they keep going up. They will keep going up forever. For example, at one point they're at 5,000. In 2035, they're at 8,000. By 2040, they're at 200. By 2040, they're at 10,300 per month. By 2045, they're at 13,000 per month. If you look at the annual, it goes from 60 in 2025 to 2045, it's 160. So it's increasing massively. But in terms of Bitcoin, your expenses are falling. So today you're paying 0.54 Bitcoin for your annual expenses. Eventually it'll be 0.32 Bitcoin. Eventually it'll be 0.19 Bitcoin. It'll keep falling, and it'll keep falling. By, let's say, 2040, you have by 2040, you have 0.6 Bitcoin. If you have 0.5 Bitcoin today and you keep stacking, actually, let's make this a better scenario. So instead of having 0.5 Bitcoin to begin with, we'll go with zero. So we'll go with zero. And let's say you're being reasonable here. You have $1,000 a month to put into Bitcoin. This is just as an example. So if you have $1,000 a month to put into Bitcoin, your monthly expenses are $5,000 per month. So technically, you're earning, let's say, $6,000 a month. You're putting 1,000 into Bitcoin. In 2040, you'll have 0.52 Bitcoin. Your monthly expenses will be, or your annual expenses will be 124K. And if you convert that into Bitcoin, you'll be spending 0.04 Bitcoin per year. This is 4 million Satoshis. Let's see how much that would cost you. So if you were to retire in 2040, what you'd have to calculate is how much your Bitcoin expenses is per year for however long you plan to retire. Let's say, for example, you plan to retire for the next 50 years. So from 2040 all the way till 2090. Let's see, where's 2090? So by 2090, your total expenses would have been 24,965,000 Satoshis. 24,984,000 Satoshis. So keep in mind that these numbers are very they're very volatile. They can change massively as Bitcoin's price goes up. But by that point, one Bitcoin is going to be worth $3.19 million. You would have 52,735,000 Satoshis. Your total expenses, like I said, your total expenses here would have been 24 million Satoshis. So you would have double the stack that you would require to retire. You'd have 52 million Satoshis. You'd only have to pay for about 24 million Satoshis in your retirement. So what I would say is, instead of buying the rental properties, instead of buying the cash flowing vehicles, where you get 10% of your stat, or you get, let's say, a 5% dividend, I would say just buy Bitcoin. Keep buying Bitcoin. Keep buying as much Bitcoin as you can, because eventually you'll be able to borrow against that Bitcoin. So let's take a look at what this would look like. Let's say by 2040, you have 52 million Satoshis worth $1.65 million. So by 2040, your monthly expenses are $10,000. What you could do is, I think that Bitcoin's returns are going to be higher than this. I don't know. The way that I see it, Bitcoin can't. It can keep going up forever, and there's nothing that can stop it, because the U.S. dollar can keep losing value forever. So at this point, if you take a loan against 5% of your Bitcoin and you use a 50% loan to value, so the loan to value is basically just the loan percentage divided by, sorry, the loan amount divided by your collateral. So if you have a 50% loan to value, it means that if you have, let's say, 0.4 Bitcoin as collateral today, that's worth $43,000, $44,000. You can take a loan of 22,000. So let's go back to that spreadsheet. So in this case, our Bitcoin would be worth, so in this case, 5% of your stack actually would be 2.5 million Satoshis. Is that it? 2.5 million? Yeah, 2.5 million Satoshis. So let's actually go through those numbers. So one Bitcoin is worth $3.117 million. So one Bitcoin is 3117000. You're going to use 0.025 Bitcoin as collateral. The Bitcoin collateral is worth $77,000. You could take on a $39,000 loan against 5% of your stack. And what that means is that if you have 5% of your stack with some kind of lending entity, then the maximum amount of Bitcoin that you could lose due to confiscations, due to Bitcoin's price falling, and then they liquidate you, the maximum amount of Bitcoin that you could lose is 5% of your stack. So you still have 0.5 Bitcoin, but now you can actually monetize that Bitcoin. You can take some of the value out. You can exercise some of the optionality that you have with that Bitcoin. But the good thing here is that you never have to sell your Bitcoin. And keep in mind that this only works if fiat survives, right? If fiat dies, then Bitcoin's price is going to be much, much higher than $3 million. If fiat dies, Bitcoin is immediately going to hundreds of millions, billions. There's going to be no value. It's going to be priceless. But let's say fiat does survive. At this point, you can use 0.025 Bitcoin, 2.5 million Satoshis out of your 52 million Satoshis. You can use 2.5 million 2.5 million Satoshis to get a loan to value of 50% and a $40,000 loan. Your monthly expenses are $10,000. You have a $40,000 loan. You take on this loan, you pay whatever interest is on there, but you keep your Bitcoin. Instead of buying that cash flowing property, the cash flowing business, instead of having to pay money up front and having to sell some of your Bitcoin, this way you keep your Bitcoin, plus you get the liquidity that you need right away. And of course, there are some risks associated with this. And that's exactly why I said that you use a very small amount of your stack as collateral. You use 5% of your stack as collateral and you get a 50% loan to value. So what would have to happen here is Bitcoin's price would have to fall in order for you to be partially liquidated. And even if you're partially liquidated, you still have the rest of your stack. So what I would say, again, just to finish this off, I would say don't buy income products, just sell some Bitcoin. I think that's the best way to go. Okay, I got another couple of super chat. I got another couple of comments here. Gronky Tonk Man sent a super sticker for $2.99. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Joseph, thank you so much for the $6.99. And then there's another comment here from Teijutsu. So I just noticed this. Fidelity offers crypto slash Roth traditional IRAs. Would you or do you recommend buying Bitcoin in a crypto Roth IRA for some tax advantages, or would you just do MSTR within retirement accounts? Pros and cons. So what I would say is, if you can, take your money out and put it into self custody. I think that would be the best way to go, because over time, having actual Bitcoin is much better than having paper Bitcoin. The way that I see it, anything that you don't have full access to is paper Bitcoin. If you have an ETF, that's paper Bitcoin. If you have Bitcoin in a Roth IRA, and if it's set up with I think you can only do multi-sigs with it, and the other party has to have two of the keys, something along those lines. Find out what the details here are. But what I would say is that the best of the best is having Bitcoin in self custody, having Bitcoin in your own wallet where you fully control the keys. Nobody else can stop you from taking your Bitcoin out. Nobody can take your Bitcoin away. I think that's the best way to go. But if you want some tax advantages, you have an IRA that you're forced to have money in, you can't take it out. I would say have a crypto IRA, or not a crypto, Bitcoin IRA, because that way you know that the Bitcoin is there. I would say that, first of all, Bitcoin in self custody is the best. Then you can have an IRA with Bitcoin that you could potentially move at some point. But there could be issues there where if you take the Bitcoin out, you're going to have to pay taxes. There is going to be consequences. So what I would say is, again, Bitcoin in self custody is best. I don't know if I really like the traditional way of thinking anymore. I don't really like the traditional accounts where you have to have them with a brokerage, you have to have them with an exchange. That kind of defeats the purpose of Bitcoin, right? Because if you have Bitcoin in a Roth IRA, it's not like you can move it around. It's not like you can use it to pay for things. You have to wait however long it takes for that money to mature, so that whatever age you are at that point, you have to wait for that point in order to actually access that money. What I would say is, if you have Bitcoin in self custody, then that's fine. But if your entire stack is in a Roth IRA, then I think that's a problem, because your Bitcoin could be taken from you. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but look into it. I think that's the key here. If you're registering your Bitcoin with the government, then they know you have that Bitcoin. They have full control over it. They might have full access to it. That's what you want to avoid. I'm not exactly sure of the details of, like I said, of the traditional IRAs. Let's actually take a look at that. How do Bitcoin IRAs work? How do Bitcoin IRAs work? Okay, so you can see here, how do Bitcoin IRAs work? Bitcoin IRAs are offered as an investment option within 401k plans, allowing investors to contribute cryptocurrencies instead of traditional securities. In a qualifying profit sharing plans 401k component, employees can allocate a portion of their earnings to their individual accounts. Okay, that didn't really give any details. Um, let's look through Investopedia. Bitcoin IRAs allow for investing in various cryptocurrencies using retirement savings. They're self-directed IRAs. There are very few of them that allow it. You retain your retirement accounts with traditional investments and separately engage. Learn how Bitcoin IRA. So I would say look into the details of this, but it seems like you don't have full access to them. They offer diversification because if you can take that Bitcoin out at any time, then it would kind of defeat the purpose of a IRA. If you could just take the Bitcoin out and you can use it for spending, it defeats the purpose of an IRA. It makes it so that you're taking the money out. The IRA is meant for you to delay gratifications, meant to force you to not spend. Mm, let's see here. Okay. So it says they're covered by custodians. So do you have to keep your Bitcoin with a custodian? I don't personally like that. But then the tax benefits could be worth it. Let's say, for example, if things don't go badly, if let's say the current financial system continues the way that it is, and you don't have to pay taxes on your Bitcoin, I think you're better off. But then again, with Bitcoin, if you want to pay for things, at some point, I think it'll be so difficult for governments to charge taxes that I think they're going to remove taxes on transactions with Bitcoin because Bitcoin is money. The value of Bitcoin will keep rising in terms of US dollars, but the US dollar is a fake measuring stick, right? It keeps changing. The measuring stick keeps changing. So I don't know if I don't personally like having Bitcoin in something like an IRA. I'm sorry I wasn't really able to answer your question here, Teijutsu. I would say speak with a company that provides Bitcoin IRAs to find out how it works. For example, if it's a multi-sig, oh, sorry about that. I hit back by accident. I think Swan has Bitcoin IRAs. So let's take a look at their website, Swan IRA Bitcoin. So if you go to Swan's Bitcoin IRA, okay, do some research on this website. Try to call them. Try to find out what they do with these IRAs. I think they use a multi-sig to do it, but there's also big fees for this, so you have to figure out if that's worth it. You can see here 0.99% fee. Oh, that's for purchases and sales. So what I would say is do a little bit of research on this and see what they offer. Okay, let's go back to finding the right balance. We'll change our screen, go back to finding the right balance. The way that I see it, and I wanted to just conclude that, the way that I see it, at a certain point, you're going to know that you have enough Bitcoin. At a certain point, you're going to know that the Bitcoin that you have is extremely valuable. It's extremely worth. It's not even really worth buying anymore because let's say, for example, you buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin every month. You keep buying, and at some point, the amount of Bitcoin that you're adding to your stack is nearly 0%. Let's do a calculation on that. Let's add a column here. We'll add a column to the left. So what we'll do here is we'll divide this, the amount of Bitcoin that you added, by the Bitcoin balance at the end of the year. So in the first year, it would be 100% because what you're doing is you're adding 100% of your stack. You started from zero. Any Bitcoin that you add is 100% of your stack, right? So in that first year, you're adding 100% of your stack. In the second year, you're adding 44% of your stack. At a certain point, this percentage is going to be so small because Bitcoin's price is going to be so high that it may not be worth it for you to buy Bitcoin anymore. So we'll keep going. We'll keep looking at what this looks like. So by 2033, the Bitcoin that you add in 2032 will only be 3.88% of your stack. 3.88% of your stack. So, the Bitcoin that you add in 2033 will only be 0.38% of your stack in 2034. If we keep going with this, actually, let me move this down. Okay, so the best way to think of this is this 100% refers to the same year that you're buying Bitcoin in. So in 2025, you're adding 100% to your stack. 2026, you're adding 44%. 2033, you're adding 3.88%. Okay, yeah, I get my own calculation now. By 2040, you're only adding 0.72% to your stack. You went from 100% to 0.72. So what this means is that the amount of Bitcoin that you're adding is very little compared to your total stack. Eventually, this number keeps falling and it keeps falling, and at some point, it'll be in the 0.1% range. 2049, you're only adding 0.1% of your stack in that year. So in 2049, you bought 51,700 satoshis, your stack was already 54 million satoshis, so you added 0.1%. At that point, is it worth it? Is it worth it for you to keep delaying gratification and to keep delaying gratification in that at that point when you already have this massive stack of Bitcoin? You already have $12.6 million worth of Bitcoin. So there's two ways that you can go here. So the first way is to stop buying Bitcoin and to just enjoy your life and just leave the stack. That's if you're creating more value than you're consuming from your job. Let's say you're still creating an extra $1,000 per month. What can you use that $1,000 on instead of buying Bitcoin? That's the first thing. The second thing would be if you're still creating value and you already have everything that you want, why wouldn't you want to keep buying Bitcoin? So the first thing is how can you improve your life? And the second thing is if you've already improved your life and you already enjoy your life, you already love how you live, you love your house, you love your car, you don't want to change anything, then you should probably keep stacking Bitcoin, right? But if you're not enjoying your life, if you're not going on vacations because you want to save money, if you're not eating the kind of foods that you want to because you want to save money, then maybe it's not worth it. I think you could actually think of this earlier. So let's say, for example, in this example, you would have put $1,000 into Bitcoin each month. You would go from 0 Bitcoin to 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. At some point, you reach a maximum, right? If you scroll all the way down, by 2131, if you kept buying Bitcoin, you'd only get to 0.54. So is it worth it for you to keep stacking Bitcoin between, let's say you can live until 2140, just because we'll make some ridiculous assumptions here. So if you can live until 2140, and in that time, you would have only bought you would have bought 1 million Satoshis. So you would have gone from 53,000 or 53,277,000 to 54.8 million. So you would have bought 1.5 million Satoshis. Are you willing to sacrifice 1.5 million Satoshis, which is a very small percentage of your stack, in order to enjoy your life today? I would personally be okay with that. I would be okay with delaying, or I would be okay with having some kind of instant gratification at that point when I have enough Bitcoin, when I can't make a reasonable dent in my Bitcoin stack by buying more. I would personally rather enjoy my life. And I know that probably goes against everything that you think about how Bitcoiners should be thinking, but your life is limited. There's no guarantee of you living tomorrow. You could get hit by a bus, something could happen. People get terminal diseases and they have no idea. Now they have 3 months to live. Wouldn't you rather try to live your life before that happens? I would. If you're lucky enough to be living by 2041, why not start enjoying your life more, right? If you're lucky to be living by 2036, where you have 0.5 Bitcoin, at this point, you're only growing your stack by about 10% after 2036. After 2033, you're only going from 45 million all the way up to 54 million. So you're increasing your stack by about 20%. Is it worth it for you to increase your stack by 20%? Or would you be happier if you enjoyed your life? How much of a difference would that make? So let's take a look at how much of a difference that would make. So let's say let's say instead of retiring in 2040, you think that you have enough Bitcoin by 2035. Let's see what that would look like. So let's say you have 0.4894 Bitcoin, 0.4894, and you don't buy any more Bitcoin after that. 0 Bitcoin purchases. This is 2035. So 2035, you have 0.4894 Bitcoin. At a point, your Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot more than whatever it's worth today, regardless of what happens. 2063, it's worth $27 million. At some point, no matter how much Bitcoin you have, you're going to have so much wealth that you're not going to know what to do with it. Right? $27 million, $100 million by 2069. By 2075, you're at $403 million. So let's say instead of stopping your purchases in 2035, let's say you kept going. Would that really make a difference? You would have about a 15% bigger stack. So at this point in 2059, you have $10 million. What are you going to do with another 1.5 million? Do you really need another 1.5 million at that point? I think there's greed where people will do whatever they can to get more Bitcoin. They'll do whatever they can to have more assets. Like we have people who have thousands of rental properties. What do you need thousands of rental properties for? Stop being greedy, right? Enjoy your life. Don't don't have a point in your life where you hate yourself because you didn't choose to do anything that you actually enjoyed, that you actually liked doing. I think it's important to find that balance. If you can find that balance, then you're you're doing okay. Right? Okay, so let's take a look at the comments now. I think I'm okay with that. Finding the balance is where you aren't adding too much more Bitcoin to your stack, and you have to make that decision for yourself. So now let's take a look at the comments. Let's go through the comments. Mm, okay, why are you always showing a spreadsheet on Excel, but you don't show us your position? You tell people to buy something we don't even know if you really own it. I don't show you what my position is because me showing you my position won't make a difference to you. Of course, you want to see it, but to me, it doesn't help me at all. Why would I want people to know how much Bitcoin that I have? Because at some point, I know this Bitcoin is going to be worth way more. Think about this from your own perspective. If you were telling somebody to save money and they said to you that they want to see your bank account, otherwise they're not going to save money, would you just show them your bank account? Would that really make sense to you? I don't think that's the way that you should do it. I wouldn't be. I'm not going to be sharing my stack. I had plain and simple. I'm not going to be doing that because I don't want people to come after me, and I'm okay with you not trusting me. Don't trust me. It's fine. Okay, agreed. Teenagers won't like you anyway. It's true. It's true. Okay, so Caspa, will Bitcoin really reach $1 million? Absolutely. BTC to a million is more likely than Caspa hitting $1. Absolutely, I completely agree with that. I actually think that Caspa in 2037, by 2037, Caspa will be under 100 sats. Today it's at about 700, or sorry, under 10 sats. Today, one Caspa is worth about 76 sats. You can clip this, you can save this if you want to, clip this recording. Um, at some point, Caspa is going to be under 10 sats per coin. Today, it's at 76 sats per coin. The dollar value doesn't matter because the dollar is constantly losing value. What I would say is focus on the Bitcoin value. The Bitcoin value of every other cryptocurrency is going to keep falling. I think that Bitcoin is going to reach $1 million. I don't know when that'll happen, but at some point it will. Do you think World Liberty Financial will go up? I have no clue. No idea. Great question here, something I'm struggling with, but importantly, we can never get our time back. Indeed, time is more valuable than Bitcoin. Exactly. You don't know how much time exists. You don't know if you're going to live tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to live till 90. You don't know if you're going to live to 110. You have no idea. You could die in your sleep tomorrow, right? You can never get your time back. The value here is in finding the balance that works for you. Okay, let's go to another comment. Anybody use Bitcoin ATMs? The Bitcoin ATMs are okay, so Bitcoin ATMs are just like cash ATMs where you go to a bank and then you can take Bitcoin out. You can put cash in, you can take Bitcoin out, you add them, or you add your wallet to that ATM and then they send you the Bitcoin directly. But they do take your KYC information. They do take your know your client information. So they know who you are. They know your name. They know they have some information about you. What I would say is just pay the taxes. You don't want your government to come after you. If you if you want to really avoid paying your taxes, find some way to sell your Bitcoin peer to peer. Because if you pay it peer if you sell it peer to peer, then you know that the other person doesn't know you. You can go to sites like Hodl Hodl to do this. I'm not advocating for not paying taxes, but I know people want to know about this. If you want to, you can go to a site like Hodl Hodl. You can sell your Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoin on there as well, non KYC. I think they're pretty great. Okay. Okay, so somebody said, please explain Ledin and how you personally use the LTV. Yes. Okay. Great question. Let me open up the compound interest calculator. So the way that I see it, you should keep your loan to value below 50%. And with Ledin, they give you loans with whatever amount of Bitcoin. Keep in mind, this is not sponsored. This is just a company that I think is doing a great job. They could go bankrupt for all I know. I'm not advocating for them. I'm not telling you that you should go with them. Nothing like that. All I want you to know is that Ledin allows you to take on loans, and I think that's valuable to know. So let me just change this. Okay. So today, let's say you have let's say you have 10 Bitcoin and you want to take on a 1 Bitcoin loan. What you could do is you could give them 1 Bitcoin. They have to take custody of it. You have to send it to them. You could use 1 Bitcoin as collateral and you could take on a loan for $55,000. Right now, 1 Bitcoin is worth $109,466. The interest rates are pretty high right now. I think it's about 12.4%, but eventually it'll fall. I think these interest rates will fall. What you can do is you can borrow half of the amount of the Bitcoin that you own. So, or that you send them. So, what LTV means is I mentioned this before, loan to value. LTV is loan, the amount that you borrow, divided by the Bitcoin collateral. Whatever your Bitcoin collateral is, you have to divide that by 2 and you can get that loan. So, what I would say here is try to limit your collateral to 5% of your total stack. The reason why I say that is because if your collateral is 5% of your stack, you won't be able to you won't lose your entire stack. You have to understand that at some point, if Bitcoin's price were to fall, Ledin is going to have to liquidate your stack, right? So in this case, Ledin gives you a warning. They give you a margin call at 70%. What a margin call is it's a call that they give you to tell you that you should top up your Bitcoin, you should add more Bitcoin to your stack, or you should pay off some of your loan to bring your loan to value down. So if your loan to value goes to 70%, that means that your Bitcoin collateral, the value of your Bitcoin has fallen. So try to let me try to make this work here. So E7, no, it's B2. E7, no. This should be uh this number divided by this. Is that what it is? No. Okay, I'll figure out what this is later, but basically what you want to do here is you want to avoid your LTV going to 80% because at 80% they start liquidating you. So in this case, if you give them 1 Bitcoin, today it's worth 109K, you give that to them today. If Bitcoin's price were to fall to 68,000, they would start liquidating you. If Bitcoin's price were to fall 35, 40%, they would start liquidating some of your Bitcoin and they would pay back some of your loan. So let's say, for example, if it does do that, so if it goes to 68,460, I'll just copy and paste this 68,460. If Bitcoin's price goes to 68,460, your Bitcoin collateral has dropped to, let me just make it so that this doesn't change. So we'll go 54,768. So let's say Bitcoin's price falls to 68,460. You took on the loan when Bitcoin was at 109K. You had a 50% loan to value. If Bitcoin's price falls to this number, your loan is still there, but now your loan is 80% of the total collateral that you have. What you have to do is either you have to pay back some of your loan to bring your loan to value down. So let's say if you pay them $4,768 just for easy numbers, you bring your loan back down to 50% or $50,000. Your loan to value is now 73%, and you're okay as long as it's below 80%. You can also, instead of paying back the loan, you can also add more Bitcoin collateral. So if you were to add, let's say 0.1 Bitcoin, we go from 1 to 1.1, your loan to value is now down to 72%. But keep in mind, Bitcoin's price could fall more. Let's say it falls to 60,000. So let's say Bitcoin's price falls to 60,000. Your Bitcoin collateral has fallen again. Your loan to value is back up to 83%. Now you have to either add more Bitcoin collateral to bring your LTV down before it goes to 80%. That's, keep that in mind. You have to do this before it goes to 80%. So now you have to add either more collateral or you have to pay down the loan again. So let's say you add more collateral, you add another 0.15 Bitcoin. So now you're at 1.25. Your LTV is down to 73,000. But you can combine these two, right? So you could add 0.25 Bitcoin plus you can pay back some of your loan. So let's say, for example, you paid back $10,000 worth of your loan. You bring your loan down to 44,768. Now your loan to value is 59%. So the idea here is that if you were to hold on to your loan for long enough, or if you were to hold on to your Bitcoin for long enough, at some point, your loan may never have to be paid back, right? Because at some point, if Bitcoin's price keeps going up, we'll just undo all of this. If Bitcoin's price keeps going up, at some point, today it's $109,000. At some point, it'll be 200,000. And what happens to your loan to value? So your loan to value drops to 27%. The same loan, of course, you have to pay interest. Let's bump this up to 60K because of the interest. The same loan is now worth, it went from 54,000 to 60,000, but your loan to value has dropped. It went from 50% to 30%. I think that there's a point where the loan to value falls enough that you never have to pay back your loan. I think that that's probably around 20%, maybe even 15%. So let's say Bitcoin's price goes to 300K. At some point it will, right? It may seem ridiculous today. A lot of people don't really agree with this. They don't think that that's going to happen, but at some point it will. So let's say your Bitcoin collateral is now worth 300,000. Your loan is 60,000. We'll add another 12% to this for interest. So we'll go to 67,000. Now you have a 22.33% loan to value. Your loan went from 54,000 all the way to 67,000, but your loan to value has dropped. If you hold on to this long enough and Bitcoin's price goes high enough, then you may never have to pay back this loan, right? And that's the key here. So if Bitcoin's price goes to 500K, let's say Bitcoin's price the following year goes to 500K, and we have this massive blow off top. You have to remember though, if the blow off top happens and the price comes back down, you still have to owe money on that loan. But if the price goes up enough and it never comes back down, then you never have to pay back that loan. So let's say the loan goes to 70,000. It went from 54,000 to 70,000. Your Bitcoin is now worth 500,000. It went from 109K to 500K. Your loan to value is now 14%. There are two things that you could do here. The number one thing you could do is you could sell some of your Bitcoin to pay back your loan. You could use some of your Bitcoin as the Bitcoin they have as collateral. You can pay back the loan, but then you have to use some of your Bitcoin. You have to pay taxes on that Bitcoin that you're using to pay back the loan. You have to sell it. You have to get rid of it, and you have to give them the cash. So you have to pay taxes on that. So that's something you have to keep in mind. You won't just be selling $70,000 worth of Bitcoin. You'd probably be selling $100,000 worth of Bitcoin to account for the taxes. Okay. So what is there anything else for this that that you guys might be confused about the LTVs? Yes, if Bitcoin goes to zero, you get to keep the cash. Agreed. And the value there is that if it's almost like you're locking in your profits, I would say. I think that's probably the best way to look at it. Never borrow against more than 40 to 45% of your stack. I would say less. And the reason for that is that you don't want to lose 40 to 45% of your stack. Somebody asked, if you had Sailor type loan, would you use it to buy what percentage of Bitcoin and how would you store it? Sailor types of loans aren't possible for the average person. If I had the ability to get a Sailor type of loan, and what this person means is low interest rate, you can use preferred shares to get that loan. You can use preferred shares to get that Bitcoin, to get that fiat, and you can use Bitcoin. If I were in his position, I'd be buying Bitcoin as well. I think that's genius. I would completely 100% do that. I don't even know if there's any other way to go. Why would you want to use your fiat to do something else, right? Okay, so Knox Bill asked, interest on Coinbase loans is 7.5%. I've heard that they have really low interest rates, which is great. If you want to take on a loan, there's multiple ways to do it. You want to find the one that gives you the lowest interest rate and the one that you feel secure in. Okay, Caspa here. I'm gonna have to put you in timeout because I'm tired of the Caspa guys constantly just posting about it. It's a scam. It's going to zero. It's going to, and only time will tell. I'm going to remove you from this chat. It's really starting to annoy me. You've been talking about Caspa for a while, so stick to the Bitcoin conversations. Stick to just talking about Bitcoin because that's what this chat is about. Okay, so somebody said better off in the S&P 500. I don't quite agree with that. And let me show you a chart to prove my point. Priced, actually, no, not the priced in Bitcoin. We'll go into this one here. So this website shows you the price of any investment, any really thing in terms of Bitcoin. So what we'll do here is we'll take a look at what the S&P 500 looks like. So the S&P 500 looks great, right? It's just going straight up. In terms of fiat, But fiat is fake. Fiat is fake money. The value of fiat can keep falling and falling forever. So in terms of fiat, the S&P 500 keeps going up. But in terms of Bitcoin, you can see here, the S&P 500 looks like a joke. So why would you want to hold the S&P 500? Bitcoin is something that anybody in the world can access. I think it's had diminishing returns in the past, but in the future, it's not going to have diminishing returns because institutions can add way more capital to Bitcoin. I think that we're going to have an S curve. So what an S curve is something like this. S curve of adoption. So I think that the S curve is going to look like this. I think this is what it's going to look like. I think that the people who come into Bitcoin in the future are going to accelerate its growth. This is what the growth looked like in the past. I think the people who are the early majority, the late majority, they're going to accelerate its growth, and they're going to make the growth increase even faster compared to right now. So you can see here, it's basically like an inverse of this. So right now it's going from high to low returns, and I think going forward it's going to be low to high. So the returns are going to accelerate because there's only a finite number of Bitcoin. I think Oliver Velez had a really great video on this. He mentioned how if you're in a desert and there's only a limited amount of water, how much would you value it? Would you value it more if you had more water or less? This is exactly the same thing with Bitcoin. At some point, we're going to have very little Bitcoin available. At some point, we're going to have very little Bitcoin available, but more shares of the S&P 500 can be printed constantly. And they can keep printing more shares, making it so that your shares are being diluted. So how would you be better off in the S&P 500? Okay. The S&P 500 priced in Bitcoin. That's what it looks like. That's embarrassing. Why would you want to hold an asset that's guaranteed to go down in terms of Bitcoin? Why not just hold Bitcoin? At some point, I think the majority of companies in the S&P 500 will have Bitcoin on them. They're on their balance sheet. So instead of waiting for these companies to adopt Bitcoin, why not just buy it yourself, put it in self-custody, and take advantage of the returns? If you're waiting for the S&P 500 companies to buy Bitcoin so you can get exposure, you're losing. Okay, next comment here. Everyone hating on Bitcoin, keep buying pump and dump trash until you eventually learn why Bitcoin is the only option at the moment. Agreed. Agreed. What if the price drops to nothing in your sleep? What if the earth explodes? What if the sun explodes? Um what if a meteor hits your house? What if you die in your sleep, right? These are ridiculous comments. These are the kinds of comments that people ask. These are the kinds of comments that people make when they don't quite understand what Bitcoin is. If you take a look at FTT, this is something that I talk about regularly. If you take a look at the FTT token, FTT is a token that was created by FTX. So FTT token is their stable coin. Even this coin after FTX is bankrupt. Even this coin is not worth zero. It's still worth something. That's the point. It's still worth something, even though the company that created it is bankrupt. Bitcoin doesn't have a company behind it. Bitcoin is completely decentralized. Nobody owns it. Nobody controls it. Even if this coin is still at 77 cents, what are the odds of Bitcoin going to zero when there's no central third party, or sorry, when there's no central party, where there's nobody who controls the currency, nobody can stop it from working? How is that going to go to zero? All right, let's go through these comments. If you have any comments that you want me to answer right away, send a super chat and I can answer them very quickly. Okay. What will the value of Bitcoin be when Bitcoin 2 is released? Bitcoin is the next Bitcoin. There is going to be no Bitcoin 2. Asking who or why someone would buy Bitcoin at $1 million is like someone from the 1900s asking why would anyone ever buy a small square area in the sky in of the sky in Manhattan for millions of dollars? I don't think that's the right comparison, because the price of Bitcoin can literally go up forever. The price of real estate is determined by the people who can live there. There's a limited number of people who can live in Manhattan, but the difference here is with Bitcoin, anybody can put any amount of value into it. So when you have that focused energy going into Bitcoin, you're going to see that $1 million is nothing. We're going to get to $1 million, then we're going to go to 10 million, then we're going to go to 100 million. Are you okay with missing out on 100 times returns because you wanted to buy the S&P 500 because you thought Bitcoin was too high at $1 million? I don't think that really makes any sense. Okay. Mm, the key understanding here is to understand that valuing Bitcoin and fiat is ridiculous. Exactly. Agreed. I think I may have misinterpreted this comment here, but the value here, yes, agreed. Bitcoin is the money. You can't value real money in fake money, right? If you value real money in fake money, you're going to get weird numbers. Um, yes, go subscribe to Maple Bitcoin. Maple Bitcoin is great. It's another group that I have where I talk to these other two Canadian guys. We talk about Bitcoin, and I think the conversations we have there are extremely valuable for anybody who's learning about Bitcoin, who's trying to figure it out. Go there and watch their channel. So watch that channel, Maple Bitcoin, just in case nobody knew, in case you didn't know. So Maple Bitcoin, go on Google or go on YouTube and just search for this. I put it in the chat here. All right. I answered high art 69er. I answered this question. I would buy 100%. If I had the kind of loans that MicroStrategy has, I would buy 100% of it. I would use 100% of it to buy Bitcoin. 100%. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, great comment from Gandalf. My boy gets paid $35 to mow the lawn twice a week. It needs done, so $70 a week. Wow, that's great. I don't know who's mowing their lawn twice a week. I think most people mow their lawn once a week, but that's pretty cool. If you found somebody who can have their lawn mowed twice a week, awesome. In 2020, he said, "I want the cash," and I said, "No, I will buy Bitcoin for you instead." Over the years, he has his BTC has six x. Oh, amazing! Wow. So this guy that he's talking about here is mowing lawns, and Gandalf is paying him in Bitcoin. He wanted cash, but he told him, "No, I'm going to give you Bitcoin." So now the Bitcoin has 6x in value. He's no longer excited about not having cash. That's amazing. That makes me really happy. Okay. Let's see. Africa will be the future of crypto. I agree. I think so. I think more and more people are going to want to contribute resources to Africa to build Bitcoin mining there, because from what I've seen, it's cheaper. From what I've seen, it's a better way to contribute to the community with Bitcoin, and the governments aren't really doing what they need to. Okay, so next person, next comment. Highly populated areas have more people, which had a lower cost of power and better for the individual miner. Yes, agreed. Because they only have to set up the infrastructure once, and then once they have the infrastructure set up, they can build on it. The upfront cost is high, but over the long term, it would probably be worth it because, again, the miners can mine Bitcoin from there. They can get cheap energy. Okay. Thanks for that. I don't have a lot of debt, but I want to get out of it to to feel more free and to have more money to put into Bitcoin. Yeah, I think that's smart. I think that's a great decision. Mm, how do you stack sats? See, what you do is you have to start an exchange. You have to use an exchange to buy Bitcoin. So let's say you use um, River, Swan, Strike. No matter which exchange you use, make sure you take self custody, because if you have enough Bitcoin, you're always going to be worried about the exchange going bankrupt. Like FTX, I don't personally know what their balance sheets look like, so I can't really advise you to go with a certain exchange. What I would say is open an app, start an app, download an app with any of these exchanges. Open an account with any of these exchanges and just start buying. Right? It's actually pretty easy once you do it. So it's either River, Strike, Bitcoin Well, ShakePay, whichever one you use. I don't really care. You set up your account, you add fiat to your account, and you exchange it for Bitcoin. Very simple. Once you start doing it, it's very easy. How can a serious Bitcoin supporter not be arguing about the October's op return change 24/7? Imagine what patently illegal content in mempools and on chain will do to Bitcoin. I agree with you. I've been talking here and there about it. I keep in mind that I'm not that well versed on the issue. I don't have a technical background. I've been learning a lot from people like Bitcoin Mechanic, Bitcoin University. They're talking more about this. So go on their channels and try to support them as well. try to learn more about this issue. I actually made a video a couple days ago, Wasatch Traveler. I made a video a couple days ago about this, and a lot of people had comments on it. So go watch it if you can. That's my opinion. I think that we should probably go to knots. From what I know, I could be wrong. If anybody's willing to tell me how I'm wrong, please. Okay, let's see. Oh, great comment. My wife telling me we should make a kind of story how to live off crypto, but I didn't feel confident enough to do something like this because this could bring up bad people and danger to a family. Yeah, agreed. There's trade-offs, right? Even when even um with my social media content, people know that I have Bitcoin. They don't know how much I have. Nobody has any clue how much Bitcoin I have. But people know that I have Bitcoin. There's that trade-off, right? Again, there's trade-offs. You can keep working your 9 to 5, or you can do something on the side that could potentially release you from that 9 to 5, that can get you out of the matrix, out of the fiat trap that keeps you working literally forever. But it depends on if it's worth it. Is the trade worth it for you? Is the trade off worth it for you? Are you willing to take on this danger? Some people aren't, other people are. Okay. Stan. Hey Stan, how's it going? Enjoy your life. Enjoying your life is a motivation to stack Bitcoin. Every work I can to make extra income to stack more. But yeah, agreed. Every time you stack more Bitcoin, you're basically putting away a certain amount of your future, right? Let's say, for example, if you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, at some point, that $100 worth of Bitcoin is going to represent 1 year of your salary. At some point, it's going to represent half a year of your salary. And that $100 worth of Bitcoin today, is it worth more to you today, or is it going to be worth more to you in the future? If you have enough Bitcoin, then maybe that $100 worth of Bitcoin, that extra year isn't worth it because you don't have enough years, right? At some point, Bitcoin's value is going to be so high that you're not going to need that much Bitcoin. I've mentioned this before. Zero point 0.1 Bitcoin is probably going to help you retire at some point in the future. We can even take a look at the numbers. 0.1 Bitcoin, I'm not going to share it on my screen, but 0.1 Bitcoin, if Bitcoin keeps growing at 20% per year, 25% per year. If Bitcoin keeps going at 25% per year, I'll go 0.1 Bitcoin and you're adding none. That 0.1 Bitcoin will eventually be worth $1.1 million, $1.2 million in 2046. Again, $1.2 million may not be worth that much at that point, but that Bitcoin will keep growing and growing. By 2050, actually, maybe this is something that's worth sharing. So by 2046, 0.1 Bitcoin will be worth $1.187 million. And this is with a 20% growth rate or 25% growth rate. 2046, it'll be worth 1.187. 2050, it'll be worth 2.9. 2053, it'll be worth 5.6. 2056, it'll be worth 11 million. And that's just with you buying one purchase, you having one purchase of Bitcoin, 0.1 Bitcoin today, and then you just leave it. You buy it and you put it away. You don't even think about it anymore. Today, it's going to cost you $11,000. But at some point, that $11,000 will be like your annual growth. You can see here 2032 annual growth is $11,000. You can see here in 2055, your stack is growing by $2.1 million. That's crazy. $2.1 million. So you put in $10,000 to begin with, $11,000 to begin with. In 2055, your stack is growing by $2.1 million. So you went from $10,000 as your total stack to your stack growing by $2.1 million in a year. That's crazy. Okay, let's keep going here. Matthew, I was in the exact same boat when Bitcoin went to 22K. I wasn't fully orange pilled yet and didn't stack as much as I should have. I'm locking myself over it today. Oh, I'm kicking myself over it today. What can you do? There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is just be happy that you got what you got, right? I wish I had bought more at 22,000. I wish I had bought more when Bitcoin was 16,000 US dollars, but I wasn't convicted enough. You buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. Over time, I've been increasing my buys. I've been buying more because I'm willing to take the risk, because I think that Bitcoin is going to continue to be valuable for a very, very long time. And I actually gave up on I gave up $3,000 Bitcoin because I thought that Bitcoin was not worth anything. I didn't understand it. So The pain is very deep. $3,000 now that I think about it, $3,000 buys you 3 million Satoshis. At one point, $3,000 bought you a whole Bitcoin. Oh, I started a YouTube channel too. Great idea. Go support the Bitcoin nurse. Go to their channel and go watch their videos. I haven't watched. I don't think I've watched their videos. There's a couple of Bitcoin nurses that I've seen now, but go support their channel regardless of who it is. I don't care what kind of content they have. Go support them. Go support Bitcoiners, because when you support Bitcoiners, when you leave a thumbs up on these kinds of videos, when you leave a thumbs up, it pushes the content to more people. If you push the comment to, if you push the content to more people, if you do what you can to push the content to more people, you know that there's going to be fewer people after you when Bitcoin actually becomes $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. So leave a thumbs up so more people see this video, more people see the value in this, more people can learn about Bitcoin. And I think you're better off. The creator is better off. So go support the Bitcoin nurse. If you're watching this, there's 169 people watching this. Leave a thumbs up. Please help to grow the Bitcoin adoption. All right, let's take a look at more comments here. Person said, do you think it's worth still investing in a Roth IRA if you're getting a match from your employer? I don't think so. Actually, this is a really great comment because somebody mentioned this comment on my chat, or sorry, on under the post. Do you think it's still worth it investing in a Roth IRA if you're getting a match? I don't think so, because even if you're getting a match 100% return today, the problem is in the future it'll underperform. So let's say, for example, you're getting 100% return today, and then going forward your returns are going to be 10% per year. You lose out on Bitcoin's 40, 50, 60% returns, whatever those returns are going to be for Bitcoin. So you could make up for that 100% per year in the next 3 to 4 years. And then after the next 3 to 4 years, your Bitcoin keeps growing and growing. But the issue with the Roth IRAs is usually if they give you a match, your money is locked in. You can't do anything with it. You can't take it out. It's stuck, right? It's stuck in that, it's stuck in that portfolio, in that account. Isn't Bitcoin taxed like income? Today it is. You have to pay income taxes on it. If you receive Bitcoin from someone, you have to pay income taxes on it. If you sell Bitcoin, you have to pay capital gains taxes on it. Today it is, but at some point, I don't think it will be. I think it'll be very difficult to tax Bitcoin. Extremely difficult. Okay, Vulgar Beats. How will 8 billion people transact on Bitcoin if the network can't handle that many transactions? I think that's perfectly fine that it can't, because Bitcoin's base layer is meant for final settlement. Final settlement is where you're concluding a transaction. You're sending somebody value, and then the transaction is done. People try to compare Bitcoin's base layer to Visa, to MasterCard, but that's completely wrong. With Visa and MasterCard, you're not getting final settlement. With Bitcoin, at some point, let's say it does become the world's money, we can increase the size of blocks if we really need to. We can increase the amount of transactions that go through on Bitcoin. But at this point, there's no need. Not all blocks are full. A lot of blocks are full, but a lot of the blocks are filled with arbitrary data. They're filled with runes, inscriptions. They're filled with a lot of things that really is not needed. At some point, I think that if people do adopt Bitcoin, most people won't be interacting with the base layer. They're going to be interacting with layers on top. So let's say layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, whatever the layers are on top of Bitcoin. At that point, Lightning will probably be very widely used. Liquid will be very widely used. So most of the transactions will go on those layer 2s, and they'll never touch the base layer. Think about it this way. How many times have you sent a wire transfer? Most people have never sent a wire transfer in their entire lives, right? The wire transfer is what gives you final settlement in the current financial system. But keep in mind, in the current financial system, the money is fake. You don't need to get final settlement. You can just use Visa. You can just use MasterCard. You can get settlement in 90 days if you want to. You can get settlement in 180 days. The government today can just borrow as much money as they want to, and they never have to pay it back. The entire system is fake. So when we compare the current system to Bitcoin, then it doesn't really work. How will 8 billion people transact on Bitcoin? They'll transact on layer 2s, layer 3s. The financial system is going to be built in layers. It's not going to be built with it's not going to be built just on on the base layer. It's going to be built on layer. It's going to be built with other institutions helping to grow its adoption. There's going to be entrepreneurs who are creating layers on top of Bitcoin that make it so that it's easier to transact with. So Base layer has a limited number of transactions, but most people will never interact with the base layer. You have to remember that. Okay, next part here. I do wonder what will happen to Bitcoin when Bitcoin swallows all fiat. Will the price stall at that point or continue to rise because another fiat system will take over the US dollar? No, I think what's going to happen at that point is we're going to have probably Bitcoin backed currencies. Maybe other countries will create their own Bitcoin backed currencies. The US dollar will create, or the US government will create their own Bitcoin backed US dollar. I think that that's where the world is going. I think that with Bitcoin being the way that it is compared to fiat, any measure of value in terms of fiat is fake. It's not real because fiat currencies can be created out of thin air. So if the US government wanted to increase their GDP, they can just borrow more dollars and the Fed can just create more dollars and add them to the economy. They can buy their debt. The current system is fake. The US dollar is fake as money. The fiat system is just a house of cards. Because if one small thing were to happen, like if Bitcoin were to actually be widely adopted, then the entire financial system could it could collapse because it won't work the way that it does today. If Bitcoin becomes adopted as money, keep in mind that people are going to be using Bitcoin to save instead of real estate. Think about how many banks today are giving out mortgages. If real estate collapses, those banks probably will never be paid back. But again, the system is fake. The money is fake. The money that they gave these people to buy that real estate is also fake, right? So when Bitcoin swallows fiat, you're not going to be using fiat to measure Bitcoin. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be using Bitcoin to measure fiat. Did I say that right? You're not going to be using fiat to measure Bitcoin. You're going to be using Bitcoin to measure fiat. Yes. So let's say, for example, at some point you'll have a 20 Satoshi bill, a 25 Satoshi bill. Maybe there'll be some kind of world currency that everybody can use that's backed by Bitcoin. And then there's a reserve that one country or multiple countries hold in a multi-sig. And then they create more and more currency backed by the amount of Satoshis that they have. I think that's where the world is going. I don't think we're going to have fiat for a very long time. Fiat is just money by decree. So what that means is fiat is money that's pushed on people. You're forced to use it. Bitcoin is not like that. Bitcoin is market money. Anybody can choose to use Bitcoin if they want to. They can opt into it. With fiat, they can't. So I think that Bitcoin is going to swallow everything. It's going to swallow all fiat. It's going to swallow all value. It's going to swallow real estate. It's going to swallow the stock market. You can already see that with that chart that I showed you. The S&P 500 is falling in terms of Bitcoin. It'll continue to fall. That's because people are extracting value from the S&P 500 and they're putting it into Bitcoin. That'll continue to happen until the S&P 500 collapses, until the current financial system entirely just collapses and it just falls apart. Okay, Jensen, in your opinion, in a personal portfolio, how will the approach to diversification change in the future if Bitcoin is truly the be all and end all store of value? I don't think you're going to be diversifying. I think you're going to. So Jack Mallers has a really great quote. You want your business, you want your property, and you want your Bitcoin, right? So let's say you have a certain percentage in your business. Let's say a certain percentage of your wealth in your business. You're going to continuously extract value from that business and you're going to convert it into Bitcoin. So over time, your Bitcoin stack will probably end up being way more than everything else. Your real estate isn't going to grow as fast as your Bitcoin. At a point, your business isn't. At a point, your business isn't going to grow as fast as your Bitcoin. So at some point, let's say for example, you'll have 90% in Bitcoin, and then you'll have maybe 8% in your business, and then 2% in your real estate. Right, and that'll change over time. I don't think we're going to be diversifying into other assets though. Let's say, for example, if you do want to diversify into companies, you're taking on a lot more risk, right? You're giving away some of your Bitcoin, you're buying this company, and then you're hoping that at some point they'll outperform Bitcoin. What if they don't? Are you willing to take that risk? Are you willing to take that diversification risk? In this case, when Bitcoin exists, I think diversification is risky. With fiat, diversification is the only way to go because you know that fiat's a melting ice cube. With Bitcoin, Bitcoin is the hurdle rate. So the company that you're investing in has to return more than Bitcoin. Otherwise, you'd have been better off just holding on to your Bitcoin. Okay, we should take out our invested amount from BTC or let it run with the investment for the long term. I'm not sure what exactly you mean here. I think that what you should do is leave it and let it grow. Just let it compound. I think that's the best way to go. Okay, any more comments here? I don't agree that everyone should have a YouTube channel. Yeah, maybe. I I think people have different kinds of value that they can offer, right? So let's say, for example, if somebody has, uh, if somebody knows about, um, wow, I'm not sure. Okay, so Wintana Studio, you've been commenting the same thing over and over again. If I don't get to you, I'm not going to get to you. You don't need to comment the same thing over and over again. I need to put you on a timeout because this is really annoying. Okay, so I don't agree that everyone should have a YouTube channel. Not everyone has something worth offering, and that's okay. But you have to remember that there are people who make YouTube channels about shows, right? There are channels about Friends, about Breaking Bad. If you have some kind of passion, you can easily make content about anything. If you keep going for long enough, you're going to build your crew. You're going to have made your content better, and you can eventually build an audience. I don't quite agree with this. I get what you're saying here. You don't think that everybody should have a YouTube channel, but I think that YouTube is a great creative outlet. You could try it out if you want to, but if most people don't want to, that's perfectly fine. I don't think that's a problem. One Bitcoin is always the goal, agreed, but don't stress anything 0.25 is anything over 0.25, even zero point 0.1. Anything over zero point 0.1 is awesome. So to answer that question from Wintana, zero point 0.4 is great. I'm buying Bitcoin ETF. I feel safer not holding in wallet anymore. That's up to you. I mean, the ETFs can be confiscated. I don't know if that's the best way to go. I would personally say that you should hold some in your own wallet as well. I guess rent instead of owning a house. Yes, agreed. I think renting instead of owning a house right now is actually better than renting is better than owning a house right now, just based on the math, because mortgages are still so expensive. Does your school course cover how to custody large amounts of Bitcoin? So the school community, what I have is the um, Bitcoin Explained school community. We're actually doing a live session today at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so in about 3 hours. So the if you want to access it, you can go to skool.com. Let me just put in the link here. Bitcoin Explained. So if you go to this link here, I just posted it in the chat. Go to this link and you'll be able to see what the school community is. So the school community is this, it's weekly live sessions. It's see here. It's weekly live sessions. You have extra content, you have extra courses, all of that. You can go into the school community. You can try it out for free. Go check it out. Go to that website. It's also in the description below. You can also book a one-on-one meeting with me if you want to. I think that's very valuable for a lot of people. People have been booking those meetings and they've been using that as a way to just buy as much Bitcoin as possible. Okay. Um, I'm actually going to go into the so somebody mentioned, did you answer the questions in your original post? I didn't. That's a great prompt. Let me do that. I actually forgot about them. So let me go to that. I answered this one from Luminous. Second one here. Neil Eldridge. What happens to pristine real estate? I think all real estate, regardless of what kind of real estate it is, it's going to trend to zero in terms of Bitcoin. In terms of Bitcoin, you can create more land. Like Dubai showed us that you can create more land. They created a beachfront property. So I think that regardless of what happens, every kind of real estate is going to trend to zero in terms of Bitcoin. Even real estate in places like Monaco, they're going to trend to zero in terms of Bitcoin because you can build more real estate. You can build higher. Maybe there are some laws that don't allow you to, but there are other areas that are equivalent to Monaco or any other popular area where the real estate's really expensive. Okay. Could you address the 5-year retirement? I'm not sure what this means. What do you think it would look like if you had 0.5, 0.75, or one whole coin? So let's go into the compound interest calculator. If you have one Bitcoin and Bitcoin grows at 30% per year, 25%, or let's go with 35%. I just want to be a little bit more, a little bit wilder with these numbers. So 35% per year. If you have one Bitcoin by 2030, I don't think you'll be able to retire because your expenses would be 0.15 Bitcoin per year. If we add up all of your expenses going forward, you'd have 0.7 Bitcoin as your expenses. But keep in mind that this number could be very volatile along the way. And the price of Bitcoin could fall. If the price of Bitcoin falls, then you're in trouble. But if the price goes up, then you're doing really well. So what I would say is wait a couple of years, even after 5 years. Wait a couple of years if you have one Bitcoin, if you have 0.1 Bitcoin, 0.25 Bitcoin, whatever the amount is. Wait a few years until So you can actually go into the spreadsheet, like I mentioned before. You go into the spreadsheet, go to column J, you can highlight everything below whatever year you want to retire, and you can see how much Bitcoin it'll cost you. So in this case, if you were to retire in 2031, you have 1 Bitcoin to start. It would cost you 0.5454 Bitcoin in retirement. So I'm not sure what exactly you mean in that comment here. Could you address the 5-year retirement? I don't know if you'd be able to retire with 1 Bitcoin in 5 years. I don't think you'd be able to retire with 0.5 Bitcoin either. I think you'd have to wait at least 10 years. If you're eligible to retire in a retirement account with 5% employee match, does it make more sense to invest the minimum amount to receive the guaranteed match, or should you forego the match and save in Bitcoin instead? I would personally save in Bitcoin instead, because I mentioned this before. The employee match is 100% upfront, but then after that, your returns are going to be much, much lower than whatever you can get from Bitcoin. The guaranteed match isn't worth it to me because I'm looking into the future. I'm looking into 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. The Bitcoin could be worth double, triple, quadruple, whatever you put into your employee matched account. At some point, the Bitcoin is going to be worth way more than whatever you can put into the employee matched account, because that employee matched account will grow much slower than Bitcoin. Okay. Next one here. Will real estate go up forever in terms of fiat, or will it go down once the majority of people sell their rental properties for Bitcoin? I think in terms of fiat, real estate can go up forever. The US government has an incentive to keep borrowing money. The Federal Reserve has an incentive to keep lowering interest rates, and interest rates will probably eventually go negative in order to just stimulate the economy. I truly think that that's going to be the case. Interest rates are already negative in real terms because inflation is way higher than whatever the interest rates are. So I do agree with this. I think that real estate will go up forever in terms of fiat. I think even when people sell, the Federal Reserve will have an incentive to they'll create an incentive to get people to keep buying real estate, the people who don't quite understand Bitcoin. What happens to Bitcoin once every coin is bought up? Can we still use it to store more value, and can the price still go higher? I guess by the time this happens, everything is priced in sats. Yes, exactly. Everything will be priced in sats. I think that there will be a point when nobody's willing to sell their Bitcoin for fiat, but you have to keep in mind that Bitcoin is money, right? If you just have Bitcoin in your wallet, what are you going to do? Just stare at it? You want to use it to buy things. So not all Bitcoin can be bought up. What you're going to see is that Bitcoin is going to be available for other things. So you're going to be able to exchange your house directly for Bitcoin. You're going to be able to exchange your Bitcoin directly for a house. You're going to be able to exchange things for sats, just like this person here said. So I guess they just answered their own question. How would people on disability be maintained if we live on a Bitcoin standard? I think that I think Bitcoiners are pretty generous. I think Bitcoiners will try to do whatever they can to improve the world, right? The billionaires today, they can't be generous, right? They have to be greedy, because if they're not greedy, then their wealth is going to start falling. They need to keep growing because the economy keeps growing and the amount of fiat in the system keeps growing. So today, the billionaires have to be very, very greedy, but on a Bitcoin standard, they won't, because at some point, like I said, you're going to have so much money. If you have 1 Bitcoin today, at some point, you're going to have so much money that you're not going to know what to do with it. What are you going to do? Just stare at it? At some point, if Bitcoin grows at 35% per year in 2048, 1 Bitcoin will be worth $100 million. What are you going to do with $100 million, right? I think that Bitcoiners are very generous. I think Bitcoiners will do whatever they can to improve the world around them, to improve the world for the people after them. I plan to do that, right? If I get to a certain amount of Bitcoin and that Bitcoin's value keeps growing and growing, at some point, I'm going to have so much wealth that I'm going to want to create community centers and build facilities for people who have problems, right? People who have mental health issues, people who need support. My goal will be to support them, and I'm sure there's a lot of other Bitcoiners who would want to do that. So I think that Bitcoiners are going to improve the world. So I don't know if this will be a concern at that point. I think we'll have enough abundance that people on disability will be fine. If nodes control the network and you need majority consensus to implement changes, what's to keep bad actors from spinning up a million nodes or whatever to gain majority consensus? Somebody said, if you don't mind to piggyback off this question, great question. How important is it that we run our own nodes? So it is important that you run your own nodes. And the reason for that is that you can confirm your own transactions. You can confirm whether the transactions that you receive are legitimate. If you're not running your own node, it means that you're relying on somebody else's node to confirm your transactions. So the reason why you want to run a node is because you have a record of all transactions that are on the network, and you can also run whichever implementation you feel is right for you. So Because so let's go back to that first question there. You need a majority consensus to implement changes. What's to keep bad actors from spinning up a million nodes or whatever to gain majority consensus? I don't know exactly how that would work. Sorry, I just realized I wasn't sharing the tab. I don't know exactly how that would work. I haven't done a deep enough dive into that. I think the value of Bitcoin is that the growth is organic. If bad actors spin up a million nodes, that's not organic growth. Organic growth means that people truly want to use it and they want to save in it. If you have currencies like, let's say, Caspa, how many people even know about Caspa? Nobody really knows about it. Nobody knows about all these other currencies. XRP, who knows about XRP? Not that many people know about XRP. People know about Bitcoin though, and people are genuinely trying to learn about it, and they're trying to support the network, and they're creating real nodes. So bad actors can spin up a million nodes, but it's like having a million fake followers. What's the value of that? What are you going to do with a million fake followers on social media? You can't do anything with it. These nodes, they could spin up a million nodes, but at some point, if it gets too expensive to maintain them, and keep in mind there's a cost to spinning up a million nodes, at some point, maybe it gets too expensive to maintain them. And at that point, you no longer get any value from that. There's no value in it or whatever to gain majority consensus. I think I need to think about this a little bit more. Really great question, X Rabbit. Really, really great question. I was trying to think through it while I was on this live, but I think I need to think about it more, and maybe I'll make a video on this in the future at some point. I try to help others understand Bitcoin. They just don't want to believe me or understand. They don't want to believe me or understand it. What do you think is it will take for them to understand or want to have some allocation to Bitcoin? I think it's the price. I think that's exactly what it is. So most people don't care about Bitcoin because they they didn't benefit from it, I guess. And now it seems like it's out of reach. I think as the price goes up, I think more and more people are going to realize that they're missing out. And as the price goes up, they're going to be more interested in it. That was one of the reasons why I got into Bitcoin initially. I wanted to fix my financial situation. I wanted to pay off my debts, and or not even just Bitcoin, but investing as well. When you see the fact that when you see the value of investments going up and you're working hard at your job, you're going to want to understand Bitcoin. If you're working a 9 to 5 or you're working a construction job and you keep getting poorer and poorer, you're going to come across people who talk about Bitcoin and you're going to want to own some. And I think the only thing that can really get people to figure it out is planting the seed, right? You have to plant the seed. If you help other people to, if you try to help other people to buy, to understand Bitcoin, maybe you're their first contact. In 5 years, maybe they get another contact and then they get another contact. Maybe in 5 years, they actually start buying Bitcoin because you initially mentioned it to them. You don't know what the value of what you mentioned to them could be. At some point, I think that it will be valuable that you mentioned Bitcoin to them. Maybe they just don't know it yet. I think that it's going to take the price going a lot higher. I think that when Bitcoin is at $1 million, when it's at $10 million, more and more people will want to put in the time, put in the money to understand it and to see the value. Okay, how would you store Bitcoin? I understand having it in cold storage, but say for example, someone has 0.21 Bitcoin or whatever arbitrary number. Would you keep all 0.21 in one cold wallet, split it into cold wallets 50-50, have some on a trusted exchange and most in a cold wallet? I think that it would be smart to I think it would be smart to diversify where you hold your Bitcoin, right? So let's say, for example, if you wanted to do something like a multi-sig through on-chain capital, but keep in mind, or on-ramp cap, whatever their thing is. Um, if you want to do a multi-sig, I think it's unchained capital. That's what it is, unchained. So with unchained capital, you could do something called a multi-sig. Look into it. I'm not endorsing them as a company. They've just been around for a very long time, and they just come to mind first. But you can create something called a multi-sig where there's a requirement for multiple keys to actually move your Bitcoin. What you could do is, let's say you wanted to put zero point 0.1 Bitcoin into a multi-sig, and then you keep, or let's say you wanted to do zero point 0.1 Bitcoin in self custody, you put 0.05 Bitcoin, so 5 million Satoshis in multi-sig, and then you put 0.03 Bitcoin with an ETF. Whatever your allocation is, I would say that it's smart to split it into multiple holdings because that gives you fewer ways to failure, right? It gives you fewer, what's it called? Fewer points of failure. So if somebody walks into your house and they find your wallet, they can only take a certain amount of your Bitcoin. I think that this is smart. If you can split it into two cold wallets, that's great. all you're doing is you're creating multiple keys to access that Bitcoin. I think you'd be even better off if you do three, right? Three, and you put them in separate locations. You back up all of your seed phrases. You make sure that the seed phrases are safe. You might want to have someone in a trusted exchange, and then something else that you could do is you could actually borrow against some of your Bitcoin, and you're automatically giving some of that Bitcoin to somebody else, and they're custodying it for you. And I guess that would almost look like a trusted exchange. So that's something to look into. I would say that it's smart to diversify your holdings. Okay, my advice to people is to define their enough. My enough is to stack 10% of my take home in Bitcoin per month. I think that's a really great way to do it. 50, 30, 20 is a good example to stick to for me, but make sure you stack your sats first. And what they mean by 50, 30, 20 is the budget. So I was mentioning this to you guys before. Where is it? Here it is. So I mentioned this to you before. I didn't add this on just now. This 50, 30, 20 is a budget rule where you spend 50% of your income on things that you need. You spend 30% of it on your wants, and then you spend 20% on your savings. So in this case, we have a $10,000 pre-tax income, 30% taxes after taxes, $7,000. Your needs are $3,500. Your wants are $2,100, and your total for your needs and wants comes out to $5,600. Now you can put the rest into your savings. So you can put the rest into your Bitcoin. And this is exactly what, where's the account? This is exactly what Sovereign Raphael is mentioning here. 50, 30, 20 is a great budget, great principle to stick to for me, but make sure you stack your sats first. So in this case, you'd want to buy your Bitcoin first. You'd want to buy your $1,400 worth of Bitcoin first, and then focus on everything else. I think if you do this right, it'll probably end up with you getting a lot more value over time. So you can see here, Bitcoin is designed to lower your time preference, exactly. So you never feel like you'll have enough. Yes, it's true. It lowers your time preference, and you always feel like you should buy more. You're going to get to half a Bitcoin, you're going to want one. You get to one, you're going to want two. You want two, you get to two, you're going to want five. When you get to five, you're going to want 10. It'll keep growing. So don't put yourself in that, like, this is a really great comment. Avoid the scarcity trap. Exactly. Completely agree. I'm gonna mention here. Yeah, really great comment. So avoid that scarcity trap. Avoid the try to think in abundance. Try to think in terms of abundance. Try to think in terms of everything is there, and the price is just, it's literally just an entry fee, right? When you think things that way, you start thinking of more ways to make money. If you can create enough value, then everything costs the same, no matter what it is. If you can create enough value, then everything costs exactly the same. The $300 TV costs the same as the $500 TV, because at some point you're going to make the difference. You're going to create the difference, and you're going to be able to buy whatever you want to. Bitcoin is a tool for freedom, not an austerity trap. Wow. Really great comment. I really like this. I think I could pin this. This is really great. Okay. Next one here. Would love a why insert shitcoin is insert coin is a shitcoin. I actually have a whole playlist on this. So go onto my channel and look for the Bitcoin versus altcoins playlist. You'll find it. I talk about Solana. I talk about XRP. I talk about Caspa versus Bitcoin. Okay, next one. If you are say 53, only have 0.3 Bitcoin, is it worth stacking more, especially if you wish to retire in 2030? Yes, definitely worth it. I don't think 0.3 Bitcoin will be enough by 2030. I think you should get to at least one if you plan to retire that soon. Even then, I don't think you'll be able to retire, to be honest. I think you'll be able to retire in 2035, 2040. Make sure that you stack as much Bitcoin as you can. Try to accelerate your stack. At this point, if you're 53 and you want to retire in 2030, I think at this point it's worth it to delay gratification. If your goal is to retire by 58, you have 0.3 Bitcoin, I think you should work as hard as you can to get to 1.5, get to 2 Bitcoin. I showed you the math before. If you have 1 Bitcoin, that won't get you to retirement by 2035. If by 2030, sorry, if Bitcoin grows at 35% per year, that won't get you to retirement. I think you should have at least 10 times your stack. 10 times your expenses as your stack. So in this case, 2030, $491,000 Bitcoin, your expenses will be $76,000 per year. what you should look at is your stack divided by your expenses. So column L, try to get to at least 10x. Once you get to 10x, that means that you have to withdraw 10% of your Bitcoin to pay for your expenses. And Bitcoin's price is going to grow at much higher than 10, 12, 15%. So you can make up for that withdrawal. But I don't know. I don't think that zero point 0.3 Bitcoin is enough. I think if you have 0.3 Bitcoin, let's actually take a look at the numbers. 0.3 Bitcoin, you'll probably be able to retire. Let's use that rule: stack divided by your expenses. You have to have 1,000%. So if you have 0.3 Bitcoin and your expenses are $5,000 a month or $60,000 a year, either you need to cut your expenses, you need to increase your income, or you need to stack harder, delay more gratification. In 2037, you'll have 10 times your expenses, 10 times your annual expenses in your Bitcoin stack. And I think at that point you'll be able to retire, but 0.3 Bitcoin will not retire you in 2030. All right, let's go back to the comments here. People replied, get to 1. Best thing you can do is stack aggressively. Agreed. Keep stacking, keep stacking. Because if you want to retire in 3 to 5 years, then at that point, 3 to 5 years, you want to have enough Bitcoin that if we do go into a bear market, you don't end up selling everything. 0.3 will be a fortune less than 10 years. The way the adoption of scarcity is going, at that point, borrow against it and live off your stacks. Value grows. Hopefully by then, interest rates for BTC loans are significantly lower. In the meantime, find any way to buy to make more cash and buy more Bitcoin. Completely agree. I really like this account, ZA1PP. They comment on a lot of my stuff. If you're watching this, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for leaving these really great insights. Okay, I'll heart that one. I check the charts at least 5 times a day, sometimes more. I do that too. I do that regularly. I don't have the TradingView price open right now, but I'm constantly looking at the price. I don't even know why. I don't plan to sell. I don't plan to do anything with the Bitcoin. It's just I honestly don't know. I'm in the exact same situation as this person here, as 1605 or 1605X. Yes, that's it. I'm in the exact same situation as them. I agree with you. Um, the goal here should be to stack as much Bitcoin as you can, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm more stressed out about anything about getting more Bitcoin because I keep seeing the price. I keep getting more stressed out because I see the price going up and it makes me think I'm not going to be able to get to this amount of Bitcoin that I want to be at. So your goal here should be, again, to just keep stacking. I don't even know if it's worth it to look at the price. I know you're probably going to keep doing it, probably going to keep looking at the price. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. If you feel comfortable doing that, then that's fine. All right, I think I'm going to end it off here. It's been 2 hours. Wow, 2 hours. If you found value in this, I would really appreciate it if you leave a thumbs up. Would really appreciate it um, if you leave a comment. I have a couple of links in the description. So the first one is if you want to book a one-on-one meeting with me, you can go ahead and do that. I think that's the main way that I make revenue. If you want to support my business, I would really appreciate it. The second thing is you can go into the description. You can go into the school community. You can learn a little bit more. There's a lot of content on there. If you want to support my channel, if you want to support my content, I would really appreciate it if you do that. And number 3, leave a thumbs up. It's free. It doesn't hurt you. It helps to spread the content around to more people. And I would really appreciate it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for watching. Maybe I'll make these more regular. I think more people will want to learn from these, and I like doing these. I think it's pretty fun. All right, everyone. Bye for now.